Welcome into a Thursday, October 2nd edition of Daily Faceoff Live. I'm Tyler Yaremchuk. He's Carter Hutton, and the show is brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Huts, how you doing on this October 2nd?
I'm doing well. Back-to-backs. This is rare. I got to get used to this. It's preseason, right? We're working out the kinks here. It's before we know it, it's going to be Wednesday, and we're going to be playing for real here, Ty.
We were talking before the show that you had to go and buy a hockey stick for the first time in your adult life. You had been sniping them from your NHL teams. How often are you still getting out on the ice?
You know what? I play in a beer league here Sunday mornings. I'm a D-man. I'm a puck-moving D-man. I can't say I can play forward because I got no clue where to go. But yes, I had to purchase my first stick since I finished playing. When I was in Buffalo, honestly, I stockpiled them. And I talk about NHL broke. These guys would say their sticks were broken. They'd throw them in the trainer's room. I would snag them and fill the back of my car. I was worried about this day, and it finally came. I had to buy my own stick.
Yeah, that's just called retirement planning, stockpiling all those sticks. How hard is it for your beer league team to get you between the pipes? Like, do they need like 2 injuries to other goalies before you're finally like, fuck, fine, I'll do it?
I've had so many offers to play in there, and my line is always that I don't think you guys can afford me. I said I always did that for money, but I think I'm saving my reunion with goalie again. I haven't been in net. It's going to be maybe a father-son game or something where I can jump in with my kids and have some fun, but I'm a puck-moving D-man now. That's all I say.
Puck moving D-man, we might need you on the nation team at our pond hockey tournament in January. We'll talk to your agent about it, though. We're going to be joined by Stephen Ellis for our big segment later on today. He's going to talk a little rookie class with us. And before we get into a couple of things here, I want to start with some extension talk. Ryan Huska, head coach of the Calgary Flames, they obviously took a big jump forward last year, and he gets rewarded a 2-year extension as the bench boss in Calgary. And I don't think that will be the only Alberta coach who gets a contract extension in the next week. Chris Knobloch also going into his contract here, and I believe that will get done in relatively short order. On the player side of things, Huts, we saw Nikko Mikkola get an 8-year extension with the Florida Panthers, a $5 million AAV. So the Panthers, following a similar blueprint that they've followed with a bunch of deals, they max out the term to get that AAV lower. And for Mikkola, he takes advantage of being able to get an 8-year term while he still can.
Yeah, and he's a guy that when the CBA changes, that 8th year is gone off the table. And again, we look at the Florida Panthers and what they've done. Mikkola is another player that was on waivers from Carolina, right? They did the same thing with Forsling, and now they have their top 4D under $7 million with Seth Jones at 7. Chicago holding some of that money. Ekblad's in at 6.1, and Forsling, honestly, one of the best defensemen in the league. You know how he's developed. He's at 5.75. So if you look at that, and then you look at their 5-6 pairing with Kulikov and Petrie at good numbers, they are going to have a good back end for a while. And this is a staple with this Florida Panthers team. And that being said, we talked about it yesterday with Tarasov coming there. Bobrovsky's getting longer in the tooth, but a good D-core sets a table for this Florida Panthers team, without Barkov as well.
Yeah, I mean, to have your top 5 D-men be that good and be signed for under $30 million is quite the luxury. A tidy bit of business there from Bill Zito. So Mikkola 8x5. Everyone's caught up on the news of the day. So let's get to our first topic, Cuts. And with the season starting in about 5 days now, October 7th will be puck drop. Figured we should be previewing some NHL awards, and why not start with the big one, the Hart Trophy. Last year, Connor Hellebuck won it. He is still pretty high up on the odds board, but again, a goalie winning it back-to-back years, I think the odds of that are probably slim to none. It is Connor McDavid opening as the favorite, courtesy of Bet365. He would be my pick as a favorite as well. I know our DFO predictions are coming out either tomorrow or Saturday. And I do think McDavid will find a way to win another MVP in his career. And again, he should be highly motivated this year. So McDavid would be my favorite. Is he your favorite though, Huts?
I think he has to be the favorite, right? He is so head and shoulders above everybody else in the league and what he can do. But my only concern with McDavid is that time off, rested, because he's going to want to peak come playoff time. I guess maybe the odds for me, who I like on the outside a little bit this year, is Jack Eichel, Mitch Marner combo this year. I think that is just a new dynamic. And for me, Jack Eichel is a puck mover, right? He is a guy that's a playmaker first. Mitch Marner is that way. But one thing that he has an underrated shot. He is a goal scorer. He can score when he wants to. So I just think that new dynamic with Mitch Marner there with Eichel in Vegas and how good this team is going to be, is going to force him to shoot more pucks and be more conscious of trying to find the back of the net with Marner as his guy. So, but that being said, you got to go with the big dogs, trying to look for some value here. And it should be an exciting, run as we go. It's just about who can stay healthy for the duration of the season too, Ty.
That Eichel point is really interesting on a couple of levels. Like I'm looking at his goal scoring the last couple of years, 28 and 77, 31 goals in 63 games, 27 goals in 67 games. Like if Marner's there and Eichel feels less pressure to be a distributor, maybe it frees him up as a bit of a shooter. Maybe 50 goals isn't out of the realm of possibility for a guy like Eichel. We talked about the 50 goal candidates yesterday, but like this is a very narrative driven award. If Eichel finds a way to get close to 50, and you're right, that storyline that'll be pushed from the Eastern media of, oh, look at Mitch Marner and Eichel, look at that connection, look at that chemistry. I think there is a chance Eichel finishes much higher. What is he here? 9th on the odds board? He'll be much higher than that in the voting by the end of the year.
Yeah, and then you add in the fact that there's the looming contract, right, for Jack Eichel. Who knows when they get that done? You see Kaprizov getting his deal. The money's on the table. Jack, I had a chance to play with him for 3 years. I always remember him complaining about his contract in Buffalo, how it really handcuffed him. And it was really hard for me to understand at 8 years, $10 million. But that being said, this is a guy that knows how to produce. He expects the best. He wants to. I got a lot of Jack Eichel use sticks too, because this guy's very particular in how he wants to play and what he wants. But he is a guy that is dialed in when it comes to playing, and he wants to be the best every time he steps on the rink.
Eichel's complaining about his $80 million guaranteed, and Hutton is throwing 5 more sticks in the back of his F-150.
There we go. It's not how much you make, it's how much you save, Ty.
Yeah, there you go. A couple of long shots for me. Like, again, you need to be on a good team. Like, I love David Pastrnak, and I think he is by far and away the most valuable player to that Bruins team. I don't think they're a playoff team, so I don't think he has a shot at winning the MVP. I think Jack Hughes has a really interesting candidacy this year. He was my pick a couple of years ago, and he started so hot. He was almost like a goal a game, and then he got hurt, and that's kind of the thing with Jack Hughes is he hasn't played more than 62 games in back-to-back seasons. If Hughes plays a full season and the Devils are back in the playoffs, I can see the path to him being an MVP candidate. And you want to talk about narratives. I mean, listen, we're not a Toronto show by any means. You can see a path to Austin Matthews having a narrative-driven case for the Hart Trophy. If he goes out and is back, and again, he's healthy this year, apparently. If he's back to 55-plus goals, let's call it, and he is clearly the best player on that Leafs team, and the narrative is, oh, look, he's doing all this without a 100-point player in Mitch Marner on his line, without Marner there on the power play. I like Hughes. I like Matthews as a bit of a long shot, too. And honestly, when I look at those odds at 18-1, I'm surprised he's not closer to the McKinnons and the Kucherovs of the world.
Yeah, he is a guy that, he's lethal. And we look at compared to Ovechkin, he's on pace, right? He's a guy that can score. He's been in that since he's entered the league. But that being said, I feel like he's also started to redefine his game a little bit too, right? He has a little bit more of that Selke in him where he's tried to be better defensively. Look at the Four Nations Cup and how he played down the stretch. But I also think that having Barkov out for the year relieves a little bit of pressure off of Matthews too. You think how many times he's going to face the Florida Panthers in that division. Mitch Marner gone. Is that going to be the, just like I talk about Jack Eichel having the Mitch Marner bump and what it brings to him, does this light a fire under Austin Matthews to prove that, he was the difference maker for those Toronto Maple Leafs? And that being said, anything that happens in the fishbowl of Toronto is going to get over magnified. If he does have a good start, things do go well. It will be an adjustment period for him. My only concern on the other side is the fact that Craig Berube changed the way this team plays a little bit. We didn't really see those 6-5 run and gun games last year off the rush as much as we saw in years past, where they've been a better team to, win games 2-1 and be in those tight knit games. And I think their goaltending was a difference for that. So it'll be interesting to see how Austin Matthews adjusts, but he's a world-class talent. I wouldn't be surprised to see him start off hot.
Beginning of the season, optimism is high, and for one team in the East and one team in the West, they're looking for bounce backs. And I want to touch a little bit on both of those, the New York Rangers, but I will start with the Nashville Predators out West. And I thought Barry Trotz had a great line the other day where he was like, hey, we've proved the experts wrong back-to-back seasons now. We're looking to do it a third time. And of course, they outperformed expectations 2 years ago. Then they went and spent all the money in free agency and fell flat on their face. They had their lowest points percentage as a franchise since their first year in the league, all the way back in 1998-99, which is just, again, crazy considering the offseason they had. And I wanted to look at things because I'm sure you'll talk about the D side and Saros Huts. I wanted to talk about offense really quick. They were dead last in shooting percentage. They were dead last in 5-on-5 PDO, which is, a general measure of how lucky a team can be. They were 3% worse than the league average when it comes to shooting percentage. And when you look at the talent they have, from Yossi on the back end to Forsberg, O'Reilly, Stamkos, Marchessault, all those vets, if they would have shot league average at shooting percentage, they would have gone from 31st in the NHL to goals all the way up to 6th. Just with the amount of shots they had, going from dead last in shooting percentage to league average, it would have shot them up 61 goals last year. I tend to look at that and go, like I don't love their roster by any means, but they just shouldn't be as unlucky as they were a year ago. So that's why I'm keeping just a bit of an eye on them as a team to maybe bounce back. But if they're going to bounce back, UC Saros can't be below 900 again.
No, he can't be, right? And we look at the save percentage throughout the league, looking back to 2015, 2016, where it was at 915, and now it's gone back down. We're at 900 from last year. And gradually it's gotten lower and lower. And I have a few theories on that. I think just the fact that the chances that these goalies face are getting, higher and higher danger chances. And it's a younger league now, Ty. We have younger players stepping in. But that being said, my biggest concern, I played 3 years in Nashville. I got to know the reason why I didn't stay in Nashville is because of this goalie right here. He was coming up. UC was on his way up, and that I had the exit stage left there to head to St. Louis. But when you look back on that team, you look back on this, Matthias Ekholm was there, Ryan Ellis. He played with Ryan McDonough. Now you look at their back end and you look at Roman Josi, who wasn't healthy last year. They brought in Nicholas Hague, who's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks, who will be back. But other than that, like Brady Shea hasn't really lived up to his end of the bargain, him coming in there. And we look at this team, like you touched on the offensive side of it. Last year when they went and got Stamkos and they went and got a bunch of guys that were shooters, they didn't really have distributors. And when I look at this back end, I don't really see who's going to eat up a bunch of minutes when you have Perblex, Englund, Blankenberg. There's not really a bunch of big names there that are going to come in and just solidify the back end. And one thing that I can tell you as a goalie who's played on teams like Nashville, where we had Shea Weber, high-end guys, when I was in St. Louis, then I went to Buffalo, where we had a younger D-core. The predictability of the game goes down so much, and it makes it so much harder for us to know where the puck is going to be distributed from, where it kind of becomes chaotic. And I felt like my first year in Buffalo was some of the best hockey I played, and I would lose 3-1 or 4-1, and maybe it wasn't great on a stat line, but you're still competing. And one thing I will say, UC Saros at his size, when the game gets chaotic and there's more traffic and there isn't predictability in the D zone, it's only going to get harder and harder. So I think he's a true pro, and I look for him to bounce back. But I feel like his hands are going to be tied with what's in front of him as well, Ty.
Yeah, and that's a good point on that blue line. Like I just, again, pulled up the daily Faceoff line chart when you were talking about it, and it's like, oh God, I don't recognize half those names. So it might not even be UC Saros' fault if he's below league average again. Let's go out to the East and the New York Rangers. I mean, their season was a disaster for kind of other reasons. Like it was off-ice distractions. You had the statement about Kreider and Trouba and that whole mess, and then you trade your captain midseason, then you make the big splash for JT Miller, but it's too little too late. And like, you look at these numbers, they weren't really terrible in anything other than their power play, I suppose. And, I have no doubt that Shesterkin's going to be fine for them next year. But when it comes to this Rangers team, do you think just, having Miller as the captain, it'll give them maybe a little bit of stability in that locker room, maybe a guy who just won't stand for any of the BS that went down there last year? Like, is solving the off-ice stuff enough of a boost for the Rangers to get back to the playoffs?
I guess this is the team that, for me, when we made our predictions and we looked at the East and who would be in the playoffs, who would be team that New York Rangers were not a team that I thought were going to be out on the outside looking in. I thought they were going to get in. I thought they would get their act together, especially with the leadership they had. But that being said, it felt like a broken locker room. And I've been in situations like that. And it is tough to play. I don't care what stars you have. If you aren't playing as a team, it doesn't really align. So what I do like, you touched on, JT Miller as a captain seems like a demanding individual, a guy that's going to hold people accountable. I look at, some of their leadership there, the bread man, I think these guys are prideful people. They want to have bounce back years. And what I do like is the fact that you have Igor Shesterkin, who's a world-class goalie. Jonathan Quick is kind of nestled in well into that backup role, and he's been very, valuable to this team. Again, a veteran guy who wants to be on a winning squad. So I do look for them to bounce back. I just don't know if they have the horses. I look for Fox to be better too. It's going to be a dogfight because the only good thing I guess they have going for them too, Ty, is the fact that the Metro is a little weaker than normal, right? When I look at these divisions, I think the Atlantic is much stronger than the Metro. If they can get off to a good start and get their feet underneath them, I think they have a better chance of bouncing back this year.
We'll do maybe like a big predictions episode next week, but I absolutely have 5 playoff teams from the Atlantic and 3 from the Metro. Let's keep going here with the show. Let's play a little hot or cold here, Huts. This is a game we've done for years on Daily Faceoff Live. I give a take. You tell me if it's hot or if it's cold. And I want to start with the guy who maybe isn't so much looking for a bounce back as he is a bit of a breakout. Expectations were sky high when Connor Bedard came into the league. And, he was close to a point per game guy in his rookie season. But last year, he had 67 points in 82 games. I'm going to say that with that young talent taking a step forward around him, I think Connor Bedard finds a way to be a point per game player this year. Hot or cold?
Hot. I like that one, Ty. I think it bounces back too. And again, you come into this league and, he had so much weight on his shoulders is that rookie year, and you're playing with a lot of emotion early in your career, right? Where, he gets injured, he has a setback, and then all of a sudden you have so much more time to get ready and prepare, and the league starts to wear you down. I think there's that mental side of it. And I think there's experience that comes into play for a younger guy like Connor Bedard. So I look for him to bounce back. And again, early in your career, you kind of fool people. They don't know what to expect of you. And then you start to get scouted, and there's really no fooling veteran NHL defenseman. But for him, it's going to be about valuing time and space. I think he's going to bounce back this year and find the back of the net a bunch for the Chicago Blackhawks.
His over-under is set at 71.5. Second one I got for you. We just talked about 5 from the Atlantic and 3 from the Metro. How about in the West? I'm going to say we once again get 5 playoff teams in the Central and just 3 from the Pacific Division. Do you think we'll see the 5-3 split in the West again?
I do. I honestly do. I just think I look at some of those teams in the Pacific Division. Well, obviously, you have Vegas, you have LA, you have Edmonton. Those are your 3 staples. I still worry a little bit about Vancouver and Calgary. I guess maybe the wild card for me would be Vancouver if they have a healthy Thatcher Demko down the stretch. I think their team isn't as good as we look back to a few years ago where they sent pretty much the whole squad to the All-Star game. But a healthy Thatcher Demko can be that X factor to try to put a fourth team in from the Pacific Division. But I still like the Central. And, you can make the argument St. Louis, being that, borderline team. But I also think Utah is on their way in too, because Staples, Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, Minnesota are all getting in. Those are teams that for me are sure things. You can make the argument about St. Louis, but I do like where Utah's coming from. So I'm safe saying 5 from the Central, 3 from the Pacific. So I'm going hot on that take, Ty.
Yeah, I mean, even if the Canucks do get good goaltending from Demko, you look at the back or the front half of last year, Kevin Lankinen was lights out. Goaltending was not the reason they were losing. They have no center depth. Philip Heedle's their second line center, and then it falls off another cliff from there. Even if Elias Pettersson has a crazy bounce back, I just don't think it's in the cards for the Canucks. Speaking of a Canadian team, we had 5 Canadian teams make the playoffs last season. I'm going to say we once again get 5, and I will say as a bonus that it's the exact same 5 that make the playoffs. I think that's hot or cold.
I think it's hot because the team that, would be the borderline team getting in last year was the Montreal Canadiens. I don't really see them having a step back, and I talked about that the other day. I think Sam Montembeault is another guy that can have a breakout year, right? I talk about, obviously getting injured late in the year. He played over 60 games last year. I think his conditioning is going to be high. He's going to be ready. The Demidov bump, another year of these young defensemen. And then the outside teams, you talk about Vancouver, Calgary. Calgary's the team that maybe be that X factor because of Wolf, but I look for a sophomore slump from Wolf too. You see this all the time. He got the contract. There's a lot of pressure on him. He was so good for so long. And again, your Winnipeg teams, your teams that are staples, Toronto, Edmonton, they are going to be getting in. They're going to be difference makers. And the Ottawa Senators, again, I can't see them slowing down. I think Linus Ullmark has settled in there, and they have a lot of young hope there with a lot of good talent.
3 for 3 agreeing with me. I'm making some pretty good points.
Well, it's early, right? I don't really want to start driving a fork between us yet, buddy.
That's fair. Let's get to our big segment for the day. It is Stephen Ellis with the next wave. Always a pleasure to be joined by Stephen Ellis. Season debut as we take a look at this year's rookie class in the NHL, and it's a really interesting one, Stephen. I want to start at the top, though. The odds-on favorite for the Calder Trophy, a guy who made a big buzz when he arrived in North America late last season. It's Ivan Demidov. It's basically him versus the field, but I want to circle in on him. What's his ceiling? Are we talking about a guy who can be a 70-point player this year?
I think, 60 points probably feels a bit safe. He's not going to be on that top line unless there's a bit of injuries there. And you got to look at who he's playing with. Is it going to be Kirby Dach? Is it going to be Patrick Laine? Well, those are two guys who are going to need a bounce back season themselves. But I think with Demidov, this is a guy with a bright future. And you look at all the teams that win Stanley Cups, and they have more than one really strong offensive line. You throw Demidov in the picture there for Montreal, that's going to be one heck of a group. So I think 60 points probably feels good this year. I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about a 95-point guy 2-3 years down the line, but I think that they're going to give him a lot of opportunities here to be a dominant offensive force, just like he was in the KHL, hopefully without playing like the 5 or 6 minutes he played very often there.
Yeah, and I think for him, he's going to have to add some slash guards on there because he's going to have to get used to the NHL and things getting a little tougher on him. But, I touched on Dustin Wolf earlier, and we saw how good he was. He was in that Calder chase last year. The guy for me this year is Jet Greaves in Columbus. He's a smaller goalie. He's very similar. Do you think he can make that jump and really be in the hunt this year to try to help this team and be in the Calder talk?
I think so. You look at Greaves and you look at the numbers last year in the NHL. He played so well, but that was kind of what we expected from him to a point, because you look at him in Barrie, you look at him in the AHL and ECHL. He was always putting up really good numbers despite playing on poor teams. And I think you look at the athleticism out there, the way that he's able to go out there and challenge shooters. When you're a smaller goalie, you got to do a couple things different. And one of those things is making sure you're keeping that glove up at all times. You're taking away the top in the net. And I feel like he's always done that so well. And it's funny, I've talked to some younger goalies and like guys in the OHL now, like what's one goalie you like to look at? And a lot of people say Jet Greaves. And given he hasn't been a full-time NHLer, it's interesting, but because he does so much with his smaller frame and he does take a lot of that net up, he's always keeping his shoulders active. He's moving very quickly. This is a guy I think that should be a starting goalie in the NHL. And given that Elvis Merzlikins just hasn't been able to figure it out, I think Jet Greaves is going to make a lot of noise this year.
Yeah, and I think Dean Evansson will reward him, right? He's a guy that wants to win. He demands a lot. I got to know him a little bit when I played in Nashville. And, now when we look at this year, the Calder guys, who legit has a chance to win the Calder, right? We talked about Demidov. You talked about Greaves. Who else is there? There are many players that have an authentic chance to try to win this trophy this year.
Yeah, I'd say I'm looking at probably 4. And I'm looking at Ivan Demidov, obviously. He's the huge offensive threat. Then you look at last year, and Lane Hutson was kind of the only defenseman of note. This year, that's going to be a much different. Carolina's Alexander Nikishin, Zeev Buium. You've got Calgary's Zane Parekh. So I think all of them are going to be in the fight here for different reasons. You look at Nikishin, he's 23 years old. He was dominant in the KHL. It's going to be a different situation for him coming over to the NHL, but older rookies typically do very well in the Calder fight here. Like, you're not looking at guys who are like Macklin Celebrini didn't win it last year after going first overall. Lane Hutson had already been drafted. He had already played the extra year in the NCAA before turning pro. So I think you're looking at these older guys like Nikishin. You're looking at someone like Zeev Buium, who was so impactful in college, unbelievable at Denver, a huge reason why they won the championship 2 years ago. And then Zane Parekh. Like, this is a guy that very soon you're going to be seeing a lot of Zane Parekh jerseys in Calgary, because he's a rock star. He's a guy that's just so much fun to watch. So I'd say those are the 4 I'm looking at as the true Calder candidates. But it is a deep group, because that doesn't include Matthew Schaefer, doesn't include Jimmy Snuggerud, Askarov, Leonard. Like, there's a lot of really good names this year.
I want to talk a bit more about the names from the 2025 class, because again, it's interesting. Demidov, Snuggerud, Buium, like, these are guys, and you can look at that list there on the screen. It's a lot of guys who have been, playing in Russia, playing in the minors the last couple of years. But what about these like true rookies coming out of the draft class? Like, why aren't we talking a bit more about Schaefer?
I think with Schaefer, you look at some of the preseason games, and it is preseason. You can only take so much of that out of it, and you could say, okay, with him still going to catch up to the playing pace after missing all but about 30 games if you count preseason and exhibition games and everything he did in the OHL and the World Juniors last year. So he did not play a lot of hockey. He's doing some catch up here. But with the Islanders, especially with Noah Dobson gone, we do expect Matthew Schaefer to get a lot of opportunities to play in the power play. And I do think it will take a bit of time for him to figure out, but he is going to figure out. Like, he's ready for the NHL. You look at Michael Misa. I think in San Jose, a lot of people were saying like, oh, maybe, like myself included, maybe he's that third line center to start the year with Will Smith at number 2 and Celebrini at number 1. But it looks like Celebrini and Smith are going to play together, and that opens up a lot of opportunities for Misa. Will that last? That's a good question, because I know it feels like there was a lot of talk last year about keeping Smith as a center to get better as a centerman in the NHL, and maybe they revert to that at some point. But at least out of the gate, it looks like Misa is going to get a lot of opportunities. Will that last? I don't know, but it doesn't matter what you do in junior. The NHL is still a different animal here. You could put up 140, 150 points in the OHL, but you're not going to be playing against the same competition the minute you get to the NHL, especially when you're on a team like the San Jose Sharks. So I expect some learning curves for those guys, but they're very skilled, and I feel super highly about them. If they were doing the Calder next year, different story. They'd be competing against Gavin McKenna, but I feel like they'd have a better fight.
Gavin McKenna, that's a nice little segue to my last question. He's set to make his NCAA debut tomorrow for Penn State, taking on ASU this weekend in a back-to-back set. What's Gavin McKenna going to do at the NCAA level? I mean, he was already too good for the CHL, the WHL. Is he going to be just stepping into the NCAA and already too good for that level too?
It's definitely an interesting question because, yeah, he dominated the WHL, but it is tough for a 17-year-old turning 18 to go and put up a lot of points in the NCAA, but he's going to be playing with someone like Aiden Fink, who was one of the most productive players in college the last couple of seasons. That's a really good player to lean on. You look at Penn State. I don't think they're going to be a national champion this year because they are a very young team. A lot of the guys they're relying on are, in this case, 17, 18, or 19. When you look at the top teams, they're typically the 19, 20, 21-year-olds. But he's going to play pretty much every situation for them. He's so skilled. He's got a great scoring touch, but he also just has all these pro-level attributes already to his game, his work ethic, the way he battles, the way he thinks the game. Like, there's so many high-end elements to his game where you look at the most recent freshman seasons out of college stars and you look at what Celebrini was able to do a couple years ago. I think we're looking at McKenna like 60, 70 points this year should be what he's able to do. And I do think he will be in the Hobie Baker conversation. I can't wait to watch him play on Friday.
All right, Stephen Ellis, Calder rankings coming out next week, coverage throughout the year in the prospect world. No one does it better. Appreciate you popping on, Stephen.
Go Blue Jays.
Yes. Are you a baseball guy, Hutz?
I am. I actually have on the fridge right now, I have the bracket printed out for the postseason. And each morning I watch the highlights with my little guy and we mark off who won. We always do it. We always do it at the Stanley Cup playoffs, but I got him. We drank the baseball juice. I was a big baseball player as a kid. That was my sport until I hit about 18. Then I decided I better start playing hockey.
Really? What position did you play? First base because of the glove hand?
Back catcher, buddy. I want to be in the action. I'm used to being a goalie. So I think it helped me. You got to be cerebral. You got to be able to think, just like being an NHL goalie, I guess.
Oh, that's smart. That's smart. I can't wait for the Jays this weekend. I don't know if you saw, but the Sunday, like their regular season clincher did like 2.7 million on Sportsnet. It was the most watched Blue Jays game since 2016. Like, I love when this country, and I'm getting real Canadian here for a second, when this country gets baseball fever, it is electric.
I know. There's nothing better, too. We went to a game this year. It was so much fun, the atmosphere. And no, I'm looking forward to it. We've been watching the Red Sox-Yankees series very close. I'm glad it's going in an extra game here. Tire them out. Tire out those arms in the bullpen so the Jays are ready, sitting, waiting.
Let's get to our Daily Faceoff inbox question. It's brought to you by the Daily Faceoff Survivor Pool. You can sign up now by heading to dailyfaceoff.com, and the tab is right there at the top, DFO Survivor. The way it works is every Saturday, you got to pick a team that will win. You can only use every team twice, and you do get a second life as well. So if you're wrong once, you do get to keep playing. So you get 2 lives. You can only pick every team twice. It's only on Saturday nights, and it's only on dailyfaceoff.com. The grand prize, $2,500 in the form of a prepaid Visa card. So head to dailyfaceoff.com now. Check out DFO Survivor. Check out the draft kit as well for those of you with a fantasy hockey draft coming up in the next little bit. Let's get to our inbox question. There was one from Neil that I read and I liked, but Neil, honestly, I think I'm going to save it because we might make it a full topic in one of the next few shows. But we got one from Randy who, on the topic of the MVP this year, he said, if Tage Thompson scores 60 and the Sabres make the playoffs, would he get MVP votes? And I thought about that, and I kind of went through a very similar line of thinking where I was like, okay, if Tage gets 50 and if the Sabres make the playoffs, and then I was like, I'm doing too many ifs here. Like, yeah, if Tage Thompson scores 70 and the Sabres win the President's Trophy, he'll be the MVP. But I just felt like I was jumping through too many hoops. I'm not willing to bet on a Sabre because just making the playoffs will be tough enough for them.
Yeah, I think they have a lot to take in. But that being said, if all these things come into play, that's definitely an immediate factor that Tage Thompson would be in the conversation. And I touched on that yesterday about him, being in the race for goal scoring. I think it sets up well for him, just the confidence in where his game is at. Yeah. And we look back at last year, what he did in the World Championships and the fact that this team needs to come out to a hot start. That's something that's so important for a lot of these teams that are, cuss teams, a team that are going to have a good impact, because if you fall behind early, it's so hard to keep pace. Where we look at, Tampa Bay and Florida, even Edmonton, right? You look at their last 2 starts this year, it's never really panic inside the locker room, where if they don't have a good start, if Tage doesn't have a good start, the Sabres don't, it's going to be panic central there very quickly. Before we know it, when it's November and they're low in the standings, everyone will be selling their season tickets.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going to our daily bets, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. I am looking at the odds for teams to record 100 points next season. And there are a few up here that Bet365 has as their locks. Carolina, Vegas, Dallas, Colorado, Edmonton. They're always in the mix there. But what I found interesting was a couple of those teams in the plus money range. You had LA, Winnipeg, and Washington. And I mean, for Winnipeg and Washington, we're talking about 111 points and 116 points in the regular season last year. Which one of those two do you like? Everyone's kind of expecting them to both take a step back. Washington, Winnipeg, like so much went well for them last year. But which one of those two do you think has the best shot of getting to that triple digit mark again?
I still think Winnipeg. I just think Connor Hellebuyck and his regular season dominance the last few years, again, he's going to be the favorite for the Vezina. That would be my team that I think would have less of a setback this year. They have a lot of things in place similar to what they had last year. When I look at Washington, it felt like everything went perfect last year. The OV race, how he was producing, how good Thompson was in net. It was unbelievable. I think he played, head and shoulders above what we expected him to go in there. So Washington would be the team for me that I think has a setback. So I look for Winnipeg to be that team over 100 again for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Hellebuyck is just the factor there. I know they lost Ehlers. That's a guy who, again, not quite a point per game player. It'll put a dent in their offense, but I still just think they will be on the back of Connor Hellebuyck next year. Let's wrap up with a little bit of garbage time. Yesterday, we got a retirement announcement from Eric Johnson. I remember when they won that cup, his celebration run was like not quite Ovi 2018 level, but it was pretty close. But I found this interesting. Spit and Chicklets put this out. He joins a pretty exclusive class. He is the 12th player to be drafted first overall, play 1,000 games, and win a Stanley Cup. It's Modano, Ovechkin, Crosby, Kane, LeCavalier, Lafleur, Stamkos, Smith, Potvin, Ramage, and Fleury. So a pretty illustrious class here. Like a first overall pick that, never turned into a superstar, but still just had an unbelievable career.
Yeah, unbelievable career. And how it started, in St. Louis and where he went to his years in Colorado, how good he was. And then getting traded back there at the end of his career was awesome. This guy was a horse. He was a man against boys at times. It felt like how strong he was on the ring. So obviously a great honor for him. And what I love about it is you get to those 1,000 game. He's just over it. That's kind of like the magnitude of hockey when I think about the silver stick, what these guys done for the game. And obviously I think he's very passionate for the Colorado Avalanche and the guy that, we'll remember forever the way he played the game and a big win, obviously having that Stanley Cup ring.
Yeah. All right. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. YouTube chat. Good stuff as always. I know yesterday I teased our insider making his debut today. Tomorrow, David Pagnotta is going to join the show. So we'll get some updates on the contract extension situations around the league. And maybe if there are any teams looking to pull the trigger on a last second trade before the start of the year. So Pagnotta tomorrow for a Friday edition of the show. The Sheet with Jeff Merrick is coming up next year on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. So we look forward to that. It's a Merrick and Wyshynski Thursday on that show. And that is it for us. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody, and we'll chat with you tomorrow, noon Eastern. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.